Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today it is finally time for us to review Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the NecroDancer featuring The Legend of Zelda, although you can be damn sure I'm not putting all that in the title. This review was originally written by the wonderful Gavin Lane and has been adapted for video by me, obviously. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling, let's dive right into things. From the opening menu that uses not the rousing Zelda overworld music, but the understated theme of Ocarina of Time's title screen, you know you're about to go on a special journey. Cadence of Hyrule, I'm not calling it the full thing throughout the entire video, takes the music we all know and love and remixes it with the gameplay itself, sewing these tunes into the fabric of Hyrule in a way that feels totally natural, but also energetic and fresh. Music has always been an integral part of the Zelda series. Mute the volume when you're playing the original Legend of Zelda on the NES, and the difference Koji Kondo's overworld theme makes is immediately apparent. That game, like many 8-bit classics, relied on music to stir the player and make the adventure feel epic in a way that the visuals just simply weren't capable of. As time and technology inevitably advanced, those themes became less necessary, part of the reason we're sure why the Hyrule in Breath of the Wild has only incidental motifs and a more ambient soundtrack. The landscape itself and the wind through the grass tells the story nowadays. A romping overworld tune would only get on your nerves after a few hours. What Brace Yourself Games does by fusing the Kingdom of Hyrule with the gameplay from its hit indie Crypt of the NecroDancer is make those treasured memories vital once again. A tutorial with Cadence, the main character from Crypt of the NecroDancer, gets you to grips with the basics. You can use the left stick to move in the cardinal directions if you choose, but early on you're encouraged to use the D-pad buttons instead, and we can agree with that so massively. I mean, really, it just doesn't work with the left stick. Just don't do it. The D-pad on a Pro Controller will suit you very well as well, but the buttons on a Joy-Con work just as well. Only when enemies are present do you have to move to the beat. You attack adjacent baddies automatically by using your equipped blade, simply by pushing the direction towards them. There's no health penalty for missing the beat, but your movement is impeded for a moment, which becomes a massive problem when you're surrounded, particularly later in the game. Once the screen is clear, the flashing disco chessboard pattern disappears from the ground, and you're free to move around as you please. Every enemy has a unique attack pattern, number of hearts, all that good sort of thing, so you'll need to strategize your movement every single time and do it to the rhythm, which sounds simple, but it can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming. And the moment you lose rhythm, it can take quite a lot of effort to get back into it, and that can usually lead to death, so be careful. However, after about half an hour or so, you become accustomed to the mechanics and unlock gear, which makes things a lot less fraught. Switching from the dagger to the broadsword is a massive help. The longer blade targets the 3 squares in front of you rather than just one, and I mean that in sort of like a T-shape type thing, and this makes managing multiple enemies at once a lot easier. We soon relaxed into the swing of things whilst wielding it, and we were able to get stuck in without considering every single step. Although I personally prefer the spear, but that's just me. There's a lot of analysis to be done, and the beat propels you forward constantly in a way that you may well find stressful at first. I know I did. For players who didn't play Crypt of the NecroDancer, imagine if you're playing chess sort of real time with only a rook that can only move one space, and you have to sort of plan every move on the fly in a split second. It's kind of like that, I suppose. It's tough at first, but once you get the hang of it, you'll start wishing the beat was a little bit faster in some scenarios, particularly when you're going from one enemy to the next. The on-screen HUD, which indicates the beat, is slightly useless at times because you can just rely on the audio, and that's a lot easier because your visual focus is going to be on what's actually happening on screen. And you can turn it off, according to the review. which I didn't know. That's fun. We suppose you could use it if you were unable to hear the music, but if that's the case, it's best to wait until you can. The game looks fantastic, especially in handheld mode, blending the visual DNA of the Minish Cap, A Link to the Past, and of course, Crypt of the NecroDancer. You get an early choice between playing as Link or Zelda, although later on in the game you'll have the opportunity and the need to switch characters. After being put to sleep by the musician and primary antagonist Octavo, the princess's father has been imprisoned in his castle, castle, and you must defeat 4 champions to break a seal and return the kingdom to peace, or at least monarchy. The characters do have slightly different abilities as well. For example, Zelda can wield Nehru's love, Din's fire, that kind of thing. Both are tied to the magic meter, or stamina bar, I think it's called. Whatever, you know what I'm talking about. Whereas Link has a shield to deflect enemy projectiles right from the beginning. You don't even have to get it from Tarin. When you die, and you will die, you'll awaken in a shop where you can spend diamonds, which are a premium currency which you can purchase using No, I'm joking. You get diamonds by defeating all the enemies on a screen. There's no microtransactions, I promise. The things you can buy with diamonds are essentially equipment that you can pick up again, so you can start again with some equipment that you would have otherwise lost because you died. And stuff like that. There's some permanent stuff, but a lot of it, nah mate, you're gonna have to get it again. These objects do have a durability meter, but we rarely found ourselves wanting for a necessary item, and killing a few enemies always produced what we needed. As stated previously, certain things remain with you always once you've found them. For example, diamonds themselves and equipable gear like the hookshot and that kind of thing, as well as significant unlocks in dungeons, but otherwise you'll lose all rupees and items when you die, which might sound harsh, but in reality, Cadence of Hyrule is far more forgiving than your average roguelike. You can choose to respawn at any one of the Sheikah stones that you found and activate it via the world map, and you'll also unlock the ability to fast travel to them at will at some point. Despite tying you down to the beat, Cadence of Hyrule is otherwise very respectful of your time. A fortune teller will give you hints as to where to go if you get stuck, and you can warp to her as well. The opportunity for beat-based speedruns or minimum step runs is immense, and we'll certainly enjoy watching them when AGDQ rolls around next year. Your game times, steps, and deaths are all tracked and recorded on an online leaderboard, and mine are appalling. On your first run, you're gonna die a lot. After that initial learning curve, the game does settle into a nice groove, if you'll pardon the pun, haha. And none of the boss fights are especially challenging, but the first couple of the 5 main dungeons really up the difficulty through sheer number of enemies. The dungeon interiors are randomly generated each time you die as well, but it was only really in the latter dungeons that we noticed properly. Previously, we just assumed we got sort of confused about the geography or gone down the wrong set of stairs. We were so consumed by the music and the beat that the actual layout of the dungeons took a backseat in our brain, which is is a weird thing to say. The overworld too is randomly generated from a seed that's different for every save file, which is nice. The joy of exploring areas both inside and out is enhanced by rediscovering music you remember so well. I'm looking at you, Telltale Heights. When you clear a screen of enemies, the music relaxes as well. Chilled, lounge versions of the classic tunes drift in as you explore. Finding a windmill early on was a particular highlight, but there are loads of examples. The game is laden with options to tweak your experience to your liking as well. You can even turn off moving to the beat if you like. This fixed beat mode enables you to move freely, and enemies only move when you do, making it more like a sort of strategy game. This lets you pause and think things through, transforming the experience into something very different, but some players may well prefer it. Playing in this mode will also upload your score to a separate leaderboard. The author of this review, Gav, completed the game as Zelda in just over 8 hours, although the number 1 score on the leaderboard at the time of recording is a bewildering 37 minutes and 29 seconds, with only 5,168 steps and just a single death, which is ludicrous. We're itching to get back into the game as well for a second time, and it's just one of those games that is just begging to be replayed. Also worth mentioning is the co-op mode, which can be drop in and drop out if you've advanced enough through the main game, or just accessible from the main menu otherwise. It works exactly as you'd imagine, and is excellent if you're both comfortable with the basics. If there's one thing that stands out as an omission, it's HD rumble. It feels like a missed opportunity to not have the pulsing beat reflected with a little subtle haptic feedback. This might also have made playing the game with the sound off much more manageable when you've forgotten your headphones and you're on public transport, which I find myself in never. More to the point, we wouldn't recommend playing with the music muted ever, but you know, reality is never that fair. We'd love to feel the beat with HD rumble as well, even when the sound's on, and so we'd welcome a patch that included that. Brace Yourself Games has crafted a unique Zelda game which fits in perfectly with the rest of the family. A transfusion from Crypt to the NecroDancer gives the old top-down template a fresh spin, but also manages to feel exactly like Zelda. By allowing a talented indie developer to play in the universe, universe, Nintendo has gained a fantastic entry to the franchise that feels like a celebration, specifically of its music, a part of the series that is destined to take a backseat as the majesty of Hyrule is increasingly conveyed through the scale of its world rather than the melodies from the games in which the kingdom was really just a walled garden. Cadence of Hyrule is not just a brilliant game, it's a brilliant Zelda game, and one that you definitely won't want to miss.